So, is the love of Jesus for everybody, or is it not? Do we really believe that being in Jesus' presence brings healing and hope where there has been neither? In a world that our video reminded us knows so well how to draw lines and limits, how to generate separation and division, it's important that we recognize our own struggles, the limitations that we place on the wideness of God's mercy. And as we acknowledge that, it's important that we let ourselves be surprised. If there's a scriptural story that we have as a gift of God to us that illustrates the stretching of the gospel beyond our expectations and beyond our limitations, it's the first story that we heard Kathy read today. This story, the encounter between Jesus and the Syrophoenician woman, is one that leaves us with much debate about what's going on here. Did Jesus not get it? Did he not understand her need? Was he testing the woman in his response to her? Did he really insult her? Did she help him grow in his ministry and take the next steps that helped fulfill God's purpose? You see, there is much about this story that's very surprising and much about it that is troubling and much that leaves us wondering about this desperate mother who seeks healing for her daughter. Not the least of these things that confuse us and stir us up as we read this text is its setting. For we find here that Jesus is in Gentile territory, and he's there on purpose. He has intentionally gone there. He's intentionally staying there. He has intentionally entered a house. This is no accident. This is no casual passing through. This is no hurrying by. He is there, maybe to rest. The text around this say he's been seeking rest. Maybe he's hopeful that he can get it here. We don't really know why he has come, but he seems to be there at least for a pause in his day, a pause in his time. And here in this Gentile territory, he encounters this woman who pushes every limitation that we can imagine. She's Syrophoenician, Greek, a Gentile. She's alone, unaccompanied by a male companion, and she's begging for healing for her daughter. You see, she would be considered outside the bounds of Jesus' ministry. She would be outside of his religious grouping, outside of his social connections. Her people would have a historic enmity with the Jewish folks. She would be an embarrassment, would be out of place. And yet here she is insisting that they have an encounter with each other. So we might look at her and say, sympathetic? Maybe. Deserving? Possibly. But within normal expectations of Jesus' ministry, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So when Jesus responds with rejection to her request, and he uses what's considered to probably have been just a saying of the time, when he says to her, when she says, "Please heal my daughter," and his response is, the children have to be fed first. It isn't right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Well, those who would have heard it would have heard him limiting his healing work to those who would have been the insiders, to the Hebrew children, to the people of Israel. Any Jewish listener would have agreed, would have said, of course that's right. They would have expected his response. He spoke their truth. His ministry was not for her. Jesus came for them. Too many, they saw already, wanted his time and attention. He couldn't get any rest. Leave him alone. Let him be. Finally, it would seem that he was speaking what they would have expected. The reasonable word. The reasonable word. However, the conversation doesn't end there. This woman will not be thwarted. And so she responds, Lord, Lord, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. And Jesus doesn't laugh. He doesn't scoff. He doesn't send her away. He doesn't explain. He doesn't justify. He says, good answer. Good answer. And assures her that she can go home to find her daughter healed from her demon. Now we can debate about what's going on here, but it seems the easiest way to get at the significance of this encounter is to try to hear it as if we were a first-time listener, as if we were those who would be hearing it out of Jesus' immediate context, an initial follower of Jesus. And what we would see is a desperate Gentile mama who's speaking her convictions that the mercies of God extend beyond the Jewish community. And she is not going to be rebuked. She's not going to be turned away. Instead, we would see that Jesus affirms her convictions. This desperate mama from a foreign land reaches out to Jesus, believing that he can make a difference in her daughter's troubled life. And she is proven right. And as her truth is spoken, as it is affirmed, the gospel breaks open in new and wondrous ways for the first hearers and for us. For what we find is that Jesus cares for her. Jesus cares for her even in a foreign land. Jesus cares for this woman. Jesus gives her not only the crumbs, but the full meal of grace. You see, there's a wideness in God's mercy, a wideness that goes far beyond our traditional expectations, goes far beyond what we see as typical behaviors, goes beyond our limitations, challenges us, pushes our presuppositions, leads us into unexpected places and situations. And here's the amazing good news. The amazing good news is that when we go to these unexpected places, we will find that Jesus is already there. Already there, ready to heal, ready to respond to the needs, ready to bring new life, where we only see hopelessness, only see despair. Jesus is already there. This amazing wideness of God's mercy and this conviction that Jesus has said yes, that God's mercy is available to all, is what takes us into all the wrong places for all the right reasons. There are needs and hurts in our community, in our family, in our world that need the touch of Jesus. There are opportunities given to us to bear witness to the love of God as we love our neighbors. In the most unexpected places, there is the call to be so concerned about the hurts that we see that we would beg on behalf of another that their life might be changed so that they might know fully the love of God. Today is UMW Sunday, United Methodist Women's Sunday. And if anyone has led the way for the church to be a witness for the gospel in the unexpected places, it has to be the United Methodist Women. Now, don't be fooled by their teas, by their covered dish lunches, by their receptions, by their hospitality ministries. For sometimes that's all we think is their purpose, but it goes far beyond that. This group is the group that has set the bar for over 140 years in advocating for women and children who easily could have been seen as undeserving, who could be seen as outsiders, who could have been overlooked, whose needs could have been ignored, never even noticed, or not taken seriously if they were. But it's the UMW who has modeled for the church how to stand in the foreign land with the mercies of Jesus Christ. And for that faithfulness, we all owe them a debt of gratitude. It's not easy to stand with the outsider in an unknown place and in unfamiliar territory. It's not easy to have a heart of service, to put faith, love, and hope in action. And yet they do. And yet they do. Our local United Methodist Women's Support Ministries like The River, Safe Passage, Agape Women's Services, and East Tennessee Christian Home and Academy, as well as Northside School, our own Melting Pot Ministries, and provide wonderful prayer shawls as gifts of grace. Nationally and globally, they're instrumental in helping women around the world gain education and gain access to health care. They're one of the leading voices in the church right now, committed to helping to end human trafficking. These women believe that the touch of Jesus makes a difference, and they will not leave. They will not leave until Jesus has been made known in the places of the world that are hurting the most. Often the UMW and those who follow in their footsteps may find themselves in places of criticism, places where people might second guess their actions. You see, when we find ourselves following into unknown places, places of hurt and despair, we may learn uncomfortable truths. We may speak truth to power in ways that seem presumptuous. We may have our assumptions challenged. Yet in these circumstances, we may find Jesus in ways that we never expected to occur. I want to share with you a story of a middle school football team. On this team, there was a young player named Kevin. Kevin's teammates decided they wanted him to have the opportunity to experience what it was like to score a touchdown. So they made a plan they didn't share with their coaches, a plan they didn't share with their parents, but a plan that there would be a game where Kevin would get to score a touchdown. So it came to pass like this. They decided that as a team, they would get the ball as close to the goal line as they could, and then they would stop and end that play. Well, that's exactly what they did. And the crowds roared at them and yelled and fussed and fumed because why didn't they finish the score? Why didn't they go on into the goal line? But here they are on the 1 yard line. And at that moment, they circle around Kevin en masse and protect him as on the next play, they let him run the ball into the end zone and score the touchdown. Now, it's a wonderful story. It's a wonderful story of a group of youth who had care and concern for their teammate, a teammate who had learning difficulties, a teammate who had some social difficulties and relational difficulties, but one whose heart they loved and one who they had decided they wanted to know that he was truly valued as a part of the team. But what I want you to hear is the rest of the story. And the rest of the story is about how the players were touched. Not just Kevin, but how the players were touched. One in particular, whose name was Justice. And Justice said this: "Once I saw him go in, I was smiling to hear," he said. "Nothing would wipe that smile off my face." Now, he acknowledged it wasn't his idea to help Kevin have this experience. He said, "I really never would have thought of it." He said it never even crossed his mind to give Keith any glory. But here's what he said was his experience once he did. He said, "I kind of went from being somebody who mostly cared about myself and my friends to caring about everyone and trying to make everyone's day and everyone's life." I kind of went from being somebody who mostly cared about myself and my friends to caring about everybody and trying to make everyone's day and everyone's life. You see, I think Justice found Jesus in the huddle. I think Justice found Jesus pushing on the limits of what was expected, challenging the terms of who's in and who's out, and inviting Justice to be one of those who invite others in to know God's love in their life. I don't know if Justice has the name of Jesus to put with his experience, but we do. We do. We can witness Jesus' surprising acts and know that his compassion with the Syrophoenician woman wasn't a one-time incident, but in fact was a forever truth about the wideness of God's mercy. And because of that, we can follow Jesus with a servant's heart, willing to be surprised, willing to be disturbed, willing to advocate on behalf of the other so that they too may know the presence of Jesus. We have a prayer that we're using this month as we consider matters of the heart. We're going to pray that prayer together now. It's one that invites us to seek after God's own heart. Let's start at "Give us a pure heart." Would you pray with me? Give us a pure heart that we may see you, a humble heart that we may hear you, a heart of faith that we may serve you, a heart of faith that we may live in your will each day. Create new hearts of love and service in each of us today, tomorrow, and in all of our tomorrows. Amen. May it be so.